Welcome to the Proven Podcast, where we don't care what you think, only what you can prove. On this episode, we talked to Paul Hutchinson, a multimillionaire who's saving children. This episode hit me hard in ways that I can't possibly explain. One of the things that I learned from this episode is that 1 in 3 children who are trafficked, assaulted, or abused sleep in their own beds at night. He has spent the last decade hunting down these individuals that do it, and this episode alone can save your child's life. The show starts now. All right, everybody, welcome back to the show. Paul, I'm excited to have you here.
Thank you, Charles. Super excited to share with you and your audience today.
So for the 4 or 5 people who don't know who you are and don't know about your business success and your personal success, kind of give everybody a quick debrief. Who are you? What have you done?
Well, quick background. In my early 20s, I had a very successful company that helped people overcome anxiety, depression, PTSD, addictions, childhood trauma. Sold it at 29 years old for $20 million. A lot of that went into real estate investments. I'm the co-founder of Bridge Investment Group. John Pennington and I built that to about 4,000 employees, about 20 billion in assets under management. I retired almost a decade ago, turned it over to a whole bunch of people that knew how to run it better than me. I'm still an owner, still a founder. It's now over 50 billion in assets under management. A whole other part of my life that is completely separate from that, but kind of in the same line, is years ago, I was recruited to help lead undercover child rescue missions for kids that are being trafficked in some of the most horrific places and the horrific situations you can imagine. I led undercover child rescue missions for more than 10 years, 70 missions in 15 countries, and more than 7,000 children through our foundation and others that we helped to fund were rescued and returned with their families. I am the primary investor and executive producer behind a movie called The Sound of Freedom. About 2.5 years ago, it came out as the #1 independent film in the world. We only spent $14 million on the film, but did almost $300 million now in box office sales. The money is not important. What is important is more than 100 million children are now safer now because their parents have awareness. 70 million plus parents have seen that film. And it's not only created awareness with them, but it's created a general topic of discussion wherein good people everywhere are standing up saying, no, we're not gonna stand for anything less than full transparency with the Epstein situation. We need to clean this up globally. We can disagree on save the whales, save the trees, whatever. We can all get together on this one thing. Children are not for sale. And what do we need to do as responsible adults to keep our own children safe and to fix this situation with kids around the world?
Thank you for giving all of that, because there's a hard pivot from what we normally do, which is, okay, we're going to talk about how to prove in wealth and create assets and create this ability to create these $100, $200 million plays. I don't care about any of that. I'd much rather save the kids. And that's just how I am. So the minute you came across, I was like, yes, let's talk about it. And especially with everything that's going on with Epstein right now, there's got to be something that we can do, because I believe entrepreneurs are the only ones who are going to be able to move things around. So as we go into this and as we face into this, you did a lot of undercover work. And I don't want to spend too much time scaring the heck out of people, because I think selling children and what happens to children is relatively well known. But let's talk a little bit about that, just so people know. These people, like, we talk about this all the time. My friends who are operators and they're special force operators, and people always ask them, "Oh, did you kill people?" And their response is, "We don't make cupcakes. This is what are you talking about?" So getting into this, and when we're talking about what's happening to these kids, without getting too dark and getting lost down the rabbit hole, let's have that conversation of, what are we talking about here? When we're talking children being sold, they're not being sold for PlayStations, or to play PlayStations, at least.
Not at all. Well, and on your note about the other operators, I told my operators for years, I said, listen, it's not our job to judge. That's God's job. But if we need to arrange that meeting, I'm okay with that. You rape a child, you're wasting my oxygen, period. And there's just no excuse for somebody harming a child like that. We ran operations in Port-au-Prince, Haiti, in which we took down organ harvesting operations with these kids. I led the largest child rescue mission in Mexico, 48 children in Puerto Vallarta. Now, all over the news right now, you see the incredible amount of cartel active that is burning the city in that region right now. I was 4 months deep cover, really close with cartel members in that area in identifying who was selling children. We had followed some strings that came from a place called Tenancinga in Mexico, very, very dangerous, in through Mexico City, and we followed those leads that went into the Puerto Vallarta area. These are tourist areas in which Americans, wealthy first world country men, would go in and do the most horrible things that you can think of to children in these second and third world countries. Now, it doesn't just happen in Mexico. It doesn't just happen in Colombia. It happens in the United States. The United States is the number one consumer, producer, and consumer of child pornography in the world. And we'll talk about this in uh, in really recognizing what trafficking is. I mentioned earlier more than 7,000 kids rescued during my 10 years. However, today, under the leadership of my wife, the Child Liberation Foundation helps more than 10,000 children a month in preventing them from being trafficked. Why? Because we've got teams on the ground from foundations that we fund that have been trained to identify what trafficking looks like as they come across different borders. We have certification programs for people who work in hospitality and hotels and people who work in medical. 85% of kids, while they're being sold for these heinous crimes, are actually go to a doctor while they're being trafficked. And if a doctor doesn't know what to look for or questions to ask, those children stay in that situation. So by training them, we just took down one of the largest trafficking rings that ranged between Peru and Ecuador because a doctor knew what to look for, contacted our team. My wife went in, started talking to this little girl, and we got all the leads necessary to take down this operation. So, yes, some of these children are taken from uh, uh, normal family and kidnapped and moved. The majority of these children, though, we'll talk about this in the show. The majority of these children sleep in their own beds at night, and their parents don't know that it's happening. And so that's something we can talk about as well, is how we as parents can really understand the problem and how we can fix it.
So my default reaction to all of this is just violence. I'm like, how do I just hurt as many of these people as I possibly get my hands on? But I know there's a more logical approach. I know there's more things we could do to prevent it from even starting. And um, if I'm a parent, if I'm going through it, because we know what's going on, we feel completely powerless right now against what's happening with the Epstein files, against all the people that had the power, and they're just ignoring it, even though we have blatant proof of it. What are the things, if I'm a parent right now, and I'm listening to this, and I just had this terrifying realization that my child could be still under my roof in the bed that I provided with the food that I'm giving them, wearing the clothes that I put on their back, are still being trafficked and molested and assaulted and harvested. What are the things that I immediately as a parent right now can say, okay, these are the two things I could do today to make things a little bit better?
It's so interesting. So many people will leave our movie. They'll leave Sound of Freedom, and they'll be like, okay, I want to do something. I want to go undercover. I want to go to Mexico. And the worst thing you can do is go to Mexico and try to rescue kids. You're going to get shot, and you're probably going to get arrested. The best thing you can do is go home and hug your children. And parents are like, well, how does that stop trafficking? Well, the majority of children who are being taken and moved to other places come from broken homes, uh, runaways, a broken foster care program. So the more you can do to hold together your nuclear family, the better it will be for your children. In addition to that, it's so important that you have a relationship with your children. They can very comfortably come to you and say when something's off, where they can come to you and say, "Hey, Dad, I don't like it when you tell me to hug Uncle Harry because he touches me weird, and he says we should have secrets outside of you, or this babysitter, she says we should trust her more than you, and now she's showing us pornography, and." Or I don't like going to this friend's house because her brother took pictures of us while we were changing. And now he says he's going to share them all over the school unless we do other things with him and his friends. And or more common than any now, The FBI says that it's the fastest growing threat to our children in the US is what we call sextortion on the internet. You need a healthy relationship with your kids. In fact, the age that is most targeted right now is 12 to 14-year-old boys, where you need your little boy to be able to come to you and say, "Hey, Dad, I kind of screwed up. I was on Roblox. I was on this online platform, and I was talking to this girl that she was 12, and she sent me some pictures of her that weren't very appropriate, and I sent some back to her, and back and forth, and now then she asked for some videos, and I did that, and now she says she's going to send them all over my school or all over the internet unless I pay some money or unless I show up at this place." It wasn't a 12-year-old girl; it was a 45-year-old dude who was a predator online posing as another child that was targeting your little boy. And it happens all the time. There's kids that have committed suicide because they were so scared of telling their parents. You need a relationship with your kids where you are their 911. You're their 911. Say, "Listen, I don't care what it is. I don't care what it is. I love you no matter what. Now we will fix this together. Whatever, if you screwed up on whatever it is, we'll fix it together. But you need to come to me first and be comfortable in coming to me so that we can fix this."
So, what are the tactical ways to do that? Because regrettably, here in our society, we teach men to bottle it up and you don't cry, and you don't have those emotions, and you don't share that. So, we're dealing with generational damage, right? We're inheriting a lot of this, and we're having to break patterns in order to save our kids. What are the things that the tactical things? How do you start that conversation? How do you sit down with little Billy and say, "Hey, little Billy, crying's actually not the worst thing in the world." Because it's one of my favorite things that happens is there's a group of guys that I know because I'm doing this long enough, and they're like, "Yeah, I don't cry." I'm like, "Cool. Would you like to call up a bunch of Delta operators and have them cry in front of you so you could feel like more like a man?" Because they cry. I'm telling you, the toughest some
Yeah.
bitches I know cry. They've made peace with it. They've elevated their EQ. How do we start that conversation? How do you say, "Hey, we need to talk about people doing this horrible shit"? Like, what is the lead in that's been the proven way to create the best results?
Well, and let me go even deeper on that and help parents understand the gravity of the problem and how likely it is that their child is being abused. So today, of all of the women who are listening to us today, all of them, that 1 out of 4 of them have have been sexually abused or admit that they've been sexually abused as a child. Now, that's just the ones that talk about it. The average age of somebody talking about abuse as a child is 52 years old. 52. Most people never talk about it. In fact, the women who come to our healing retreats is well over 50% of women who are dealing with anxiety, depression, PTSD, addictions, anger issues, all of these things. It's well over 50%. Now, with men, it's less. It's 1 in 5 that talk about it. Now, the reason behind it is that most men don't talk about it. Okay, most men don't talk about it. A man saying, "Well, that thing that happened to me when I was 8 by my uncle, that'll make me less of a man if I talk about that." No, it won't. You were 8. That was a horrible thing that happened to that little boy because the parents were unaware of the dangers that were out there because of a very broken uncle that did that at the time. Now, here's some motivation, guys, to talk to the kids to help them heal and motivation for you to get the help that you need. So, statistically, if a man holds it inside, men don't cry, men don't talk about it. If a man holds it inside and never talks about it, it's going to come out. It comes out in anger issues, anxiety, depression, PTSD, all of these unhealthy relationships, addictions, and 1 in 3 that don't talk about it. 1 in 3, if not given the help, the love, the healing that they need, become a contact offender in the physical, verbal, and sexual abuse of a child. Now, most of my undercover operators were abused as children. They grew up to be protectors rather than abusers. What was the difference? They talked about it. They got it off their chest, even talking to their wife, talking to us as other operators. "Hey, this is what happened, and this is why I'm here. This is why I'm risking my life to save these children." And so, if nothing else, guys, if nothing else, Talk about it, because the number goes from 1 in 3 to about 1 in 50, if not 1 in 100, if you simply release that toxic energy and talk about it so that you can get the help that you need. Even if you're like, hey, I don't need to heal, you may not need to go to a healing retreat. Just have a conversation with your church buddy, or your friend at work, or your wife, or whatever. Talk about that, because that will help them heal. So when it comes to kids, it's so important that we start having healthy conversations about what's appropriate and what's not with these children. We have kids as young as 5, 6 years old that we have programs in orphanages and foster programs, things that these kids are more likely to be abused. And so we have teams. We have psychologists. We, meaning the Child Liberation Foundation, has teams that go in, and they'll get a big roll of paper, and they'll cut it so that it's just big enough for a child to lay down on, and they'll take turns outlining each other's bodies. So now it's their body there, and they color their shorts, and they color a shirt, and they put a smile on the face, they color it, and then we have a discussion about what's private. Okay, what's here, and they cut out another piece of paper, and then we talk to them about, okay, where do we, and they glue it on. Okay, these are the private places. These are the places that nobody gets to touch. Nobody gets to, have you show them that isn't your mom giving you a bath or something. This is important. And so just having that conversation, a fun little activity with a 4, 5, 6-year-old child, will help them understand, oh, wow. And the psychologist can tell when they're doing that with them immediately. The children who are being abused, they'll exhibit certain behaviors when you're teaching them that, and they're putting these are the areas not to touch. And so having those conversations at a very young age, because the majority of men who were sexually abused as children, it happened under the age of 10 years old in their home, or a family member's home, or a neighbor's home. The majority of them under the age of 10. So if you're not having that conversation with your young kids, it may be too late. And now we have to go into helping them heal from that.
It's interesting you say that because everyone thinks it's only happening to children or size matters. A dear friend, is now 6'7", 6'8", and when he was a teenager, mid-teenager, seemed like, oh, he was safe because he was this massive guy. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And he's come out and he's talked about it and all that. It happens there as well. I wanna get more into the tactics, and because this is important to me, and this is something that I'm probably never gonna beat these families. But if I'm sitting down as a mom, if I'm sitting down as a dude, I wanna walk through that process. I'm a guy, I got abused when I was younger. I'm a woman, I got abused when I was younger, whatever it is. I'm an adult now. How do I start that conversation? How do I? Because it's a very hard thing to do because you have this ego or this illusion and you've hid this behind. There's an immense amount of shame about it.
Yeah.
How do you start that? What are the best tactics? You mentioned laying down on a piece of paper and gluing that up, but if you're talking as an adult, a guy to another guy to where we can stop that contact abuse, how do we start it? What are the ways that you have found start it with this conversation? And the reason I bring it up, and I'll give you an example, is whenever I'm out and about, and I never ask whoever my partner, I never say, "What do you wanna eat?" I always say, "What do we wanna eat? What did we like last week?" I've changed the "you" to a "we." Now we're on the same team. It's a very subtle thing, but it changes the ballgame. Those little tactics matter. When you're doing something like this and you're an adult, and we're gonna walk it back from the adult all the way down to the kids, because I want people to drive away from this and listen from this going, "This is exactly what I can do today to hopefully start reversing this and start helping these kids out," and helping the adults as well. But it starts, I think, with the adults because they're higher level of consciousness. If I'm an adult male and this has happened to me at some point, how do I start the conversation that's gonna help me get the best results?
Well, find who you feel most safe in talking to. This could be, your best friend, somebody at work, or your spouse. Um, and first of all, if you're talking to another guy, chances are he's had some bouts with pornography and things like this, and a lot of our sexual dysfunction as men and those addictions come from some unhealed wounds of our past that we're trying to to cover up those wounds with this. I have one of my operators who, um, he was so sexually uh, active through his high school years and very promiscuous, and he recognized as we really got into it that he was doing that subconsciously because he was trying to prove to the world that he wasn't homosexual because at 8 years old he was abused by his uncle, right? And so his acting out was a subconscious response to this feeling that I gotta prove that, because of that thing that happened to me type thing. And so having a conversation with another guy, recognizing that there's more than a 50% chance that he's been through it as well and has never talked about it. And so that's a win in just being able to feel comfortable and saying, "Hey, this happened to me." With women, guys, your wife has a higher chance than even your guy friends at work that she had gone through something as well. And so and very, very seldom is especially your spouse is not going to hold that against you. It's a sign of humility and saying, "Sweetie, I need to talk to you about something that's kind of heavy on me that I've if I can get it off my chest, I know that it's something that I can just release and not hold on to these issues and stuff. It may be coming out in some of my anger issues or anxiety or whatever else." And so just sitting down, setting that space together. Now, I will say this, and this is important, guys. I'm not going to get religious here, but I'm going to throw this out. In terms of of divorce rates in the United States are about 1 in 2. It's 50% plus for divorce rate. And if I told you could do something every day that would take you 2 minutes, maybe five at max, and it would take it from 1 in 2 to 1 in 1,000. Would you want to know what it is? And people are like, "Oh, I want to." That's a huge difference, 1 in 2 to 1 in 1,000. Couples who choose to pray together, statistically, it's 1 in 1,152 is the divorce rate of couples that pray together every day. And so turning it doesn't have to be something super religious. This is simply holding hands, offering gratitude and saying, "Hey, we here's some things we need some help on," whatever it is. In the Alcoholics Anonymous program, the AA program, the 12 steps, four of those steps are very God-centered. In fact, I would argue five or six, but four are very God-centered. In fact, even sexual addictions anonymous are as well. And acknowledging a higher power and acknowledging that I need that extra help to be able to heal through this. And so again, not a religious conversation, but it's super important that you recognize the power of coming together as a couple and maybe just sitting down and saying, "Hey, can we start this conversation with a prayer? Are you good with that?" And do so, and just bring in that spirit of authenticity and that spirit of gratitude and healing into the conversation, and then move forward with, "Hey, this is some things that happened to me. It doesn't define me. I just want to release it because I've been holding on to it, and I don't want to hold on to it anymore."
Right, I think that's important with the factors of it, of how the human mind works. Having the conversation, I don't care if you believe in God, Buddha, Allah, the Big Bang, the magic chicken, the dancing donkey, I really authentically do not care. That's irrelevant to me. That noun is irrelevant to me. But sitting down and saying, "Hey, well, this is what I'm grateful for today. This was when I feel so blessed." And whatever it is, if you believe in a magic bowl of spaghetti, awesome. I love that I don't care. Just don't make me believe in the magic bowl of spaghetti. But if you sit down and this it is what it is, having that conversation, say, "This is why I feel blessed for today. This was the best part of my day. This is what I'm grateful for. This is why I'm grateful for A, B, C, D, and E." It creates this authentic connection. And then from there, having that, "Hey, there's this thing that's holding space on me, yada, yada, I'd like to talk about it." I think something you said is also really important, that it doesn't define you. Everybody on this planet has done things that, God, we wish we wouldn't have done. We've had things done we wish we wouldn't have had done. It is what it is. We've all done that. But that doesn't define me any more than a freckle on my butt. It just is what it is. And having that conversation. Regrettably, the most successful entrepreneurs I know, just like the most successful operators I know, have all had something. Every
Yeah.
single one of them. And abuse isn't just physical. right? As you were talking about with the situation with these kids or, having pictures and doing that, that's completely mental. Abuse is abuse. Emotion is abuse, all of that. So we get it from the guy side. My hallucination is for the female side, talking and sitting down. It's a similar opening path to that. Is there something that we do differently for the females, if you're an adult female, that you would do differently than an adult male?
Well, I want to just take just a couple minutes and touch on uh, on where my healing came from,
Mhm.
where my operators and their wives have, and where a lot of women that I have worked with over the years, where their healing has come from. So, back up with the audience. I my early 20s, I started a company, um, coaching company that helped people. It was a cognitive behavioral therapy program. We had workbooks, audio programs that helped change the negative habit patterns of thought that were creating anxiety and depression in the first place. Things like negative self-talk and worry and what if thinking and negative expectations and the perceptions we have of ourselves, our coping skills in dealing with stress. These are all habits that can be changed. The problem is that many of them are deep embedded in our subconscious mind. If you imagine a brick of gold, and this brick of gold is our subconscious, and it's running 95% of our life is run by this subconscious mind. Now, when we're children, 0 to 9, 10 years old, that brick of gold is in a fluid state. It's in a state of neuroplasticity. We're very, very impressionable. We can learn 3 or 4 languages at the same time that we can learn how to ride our bike and eat and everything else. And so if something happens during those impressionable years, if our uncle abuses us, or even something simpler, our dad says, "Oh, you look ugly in blue," whatever it is, in that flow state of that gold bar, those things get deeply embedded, and they're very difficult to break out. They say it takes 21 days to create a habit, but that's 21 days in chiseling at the surface of this gold bar. If there's something super deep in there, it takes a lot longer. Sometimes 10 and 20 years worth of therapy to be able to extract those things that were deeply embedded. There are certain things that we can do to turn that gold bar back into a flow state. Their breath work. I've been a certified breath work worker for many, many years. Meditation. There are certain things that we can do within deep meditation techniques that can help change that. You can do some everyday positive affirmations and starting to change those negative habit patterns. When we were working with the company 35 years ago, it took us 12 weeks with a personal coach, 1 to 2 hours a day, to make some real long-term change with people who had debilitating anxiety, depression, addiction issues that were stemming from some unhealed childhood trauma. 10 years ago, I had some operators, I had Green Berets with 300 missions in Afghanistan who already had PTSD, that one undercover mission with us and seeing a menu with children's faces and prices of things they would do for. It just sent their PTSD off the charts. They couldn't deal with it anymore. So we were losing operators as we were funding these operations. And so I delved back into my 35 year ago with my company, helping people deal with this stuff, the cognitive restructuring, and I met some doctors. We met two of my undercover operators, introduced me to some doctors and some scientists that were working on the protocol for the proper use. And let me nail that word, guys. The proper use of psychedelics when it comes to healing from childhood trauma, anxiety, depression, PTSD, etc. Now, let me get it straight right now. I am not a fan whatsoever of us legalizing magic mushrooms and your kids going to a rave party and getting high with their friends. This is not only a bad idea, it's dangerous. Why? Because what happens is things like psilocybin in the mushrooms, it creates a temporary state of neuroplasticity, like when you were a kid, turns that gold bar into a flow state. And if you're at a rave party and you've got rap music going over here, and somebody yelling at their wife over here, an orgy going on over there. And you're in that super impressionable state. It's super dangerous for you. However, if you have a trained facilitator who knows how to work through some of that trauma, and the right music, the right intentions coming into it, you can literally create 10 and 20 years worth of therapy in 24 to 48 hours. And so the laws will change in the US over the next 2 years. And it's so important that we have a little bit of a discussion as to what responsible adults can do to help them, help others, help their loved ones release some of that trauma that have been deeply embedded in that gold bar of their subconscious mind.
Yeah, and we really wanna speak it on this because I don't drink, I don't smoke, I don't do drugs. It's just I've always been that way. I can't drink, I take 3 sips of it, comes right back out. It's a gift from my grandmother. Thank you, grandma. So I've
I
never been
love it.
one that partakes in it, just, "Thanks, grandma." But in this environment, we're not talking about, "Let's go buy this and do it on your home, sitting on the couch." This is
Mm,
scientific backed things that have multiple studies for decades that are in controlled environments based on your weight, your blood work, everything that's involved. This is very, very specific. I wanna make sure, again, this is not medical advice on this show, but going through and doing this with someone who is a trained professional who's done this for an exceptional, like, I wouldn't take 700 Tylenols in the morning. Probably not gonna work out
exactly.
so well, but there are measurements that we've based it, and there is
Yep.
science and people are getting into it because people think, "Oh, I'm gonna take this thing," people have PTSD, and they take ayahuasca or MDMA or whatever the laundry list is in the middle of a jungle while they're licking the butt of a frog. I'm like, "What are you doing? No, 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 no." There are very specific things you could do in a controlled environment where we know, hey, it's like building a Lego piece. I've got my instruction manual. Let me try and put it together step by step by step and leverage the science. So please
Exactly.
understand, if you're listening to this
So
right now,
important.
we're not telling you to go lick the back of frogs and to drink a bunch of LSD or whatever you do with LSD. I have no idea. We're not telling you to do that. What we're trying to say is there is professional options out there. Go through the therapy process, see if you qualify, do the blood work, find a trained professional who's done it for an exceptional long period of time. That's a healthy environment because one of my dear friends who's got TBI and he's got PTSD has done some of this stuff. And he came to me and he goes, "Okay, it doesn't fix it, but at least points my car in the right direction so I can start heading and taking the next step by step by step by step by step path." It's the
Yep.
same thing with cold plunges. People are like, "I'm gonna do a cold plunge." I'm like, "I love cold plunges. They're great." They're like, "I'm gonna do it for 4 hours." I'm like, "That's probably not gonna work out so well for certain parts of your body, bud." So working through that, I grew up in South Florida, so I'm saturated with mold. So my doctor's like, "You're not doing cold plunges anymore, chief. You gotta get an IR sauna and get it out, not contain it." I was like, "Oh, okay, that makes sense." So there's science behind all of this that we're trying to pivot around. So again,
Exactly.
Paul's being very, very purposeful here. We're being very honest. Don't go to the local guy down the street and be like, "Hey, can I have 7 gallons of this and drink it?" You'll fucking die. Don't do
Yep.
that. Work
Yep.
with someone in a very trained way because it's not a fix. And it's just starting the process and moving things around. You can't just keep doing it over and over again and thinking that magically everything's going to be fine. There's still a lot of work and a lot of therapy, and therapy is the gift you give yourself. Just it is what it is. So if we've
Exactly.
got
I couldn't have said it better.
if we've got adults, so we've got kind of the adults, right? You get in therapy,
Hmm.
you talk to someone, you understand that it doesn't identify you, it doesn't label that this is not who you are. Like I used to play semi-professional baseball. I can't throw a baseball anymore. I might probably could. It just would be embarrassing. Like, hey, that was 60 miles an hour. That's embarrassing. But that's not who I am anymore. It is what it is. We understand that this is here. I want to talk about what we could do for the kids. You talked about, hey, there's this game, you can do this. What are the warning signs that, because there's a lot of single families, regrettably, I mean, marriage is bombing out around 60 something percent at this point. There's a lot of broken homes. I come from a broken home, like, multiple divorces. I'm very blessed. None of that things happened to me. But as a parent right now who is watching the system completely disregard what is happening to these children who are menu items at this point, what are the things that a parent can sit there and say, hey, what do I need to look out for with my kid? How do I do this? How do I create it? How do I become the sanctuary for my child to come to? And then how do I, because they're not going to come to us, because some of them don't know if it's good or bad at this point. This is just it is what it is. How do I identify what's going on with my kids? Are there certain telltale signs? And the reason I bring this up, I know I'm talking way too much here, is when the whole situation with Columbine happened. They're like, "Oh, it's because they're playing this video game and listening to this music." I was like, "Time out. I'm playing to those video games. I'm listening to that music. I have access to weaponry. I didn't shoot up my school." So there's you can't say this is everything. So what are the signs that kind of lead us to where we're going and that we could look out for our kids?
Well, number one, if your 12, 13-year-old daughter goes from being super outgoing to recluse, a lot of parents think, oh, well, she's coming of age, maybe she's going into puberty and those emotional changes. No, uh, more likely it's some other things that are going on, but she doesn't want to talk about it. Now, more important than looking for the signs of abuse, it's if we can prevent it before it happens, that is everything. Parents, we don't want to wait until your daughter has gone through that. We don't want to wait until your son has been, gone through some sextortion thing online. We don't want to wait for that. It take the time to talk to them. Take the time to sit down and have the important conversations. Your 6-year-old, 7-year-old has probably already seen pornography on his friend's phone.
100%.
So you've got to start having these conversations young. Parents are like, well, let's wait until they're old enough to really make a difference. No, at 5 years old, they need to be having the conversation about what's appropriate and what's not, and so that they can. Once you have that conversation, you can say, hey, can you come to me if that ever happens? If anybody ever tries to say that you should trust them more than us, if anybody says that tries to show you pornography, if anybody touches you in an inappropriate way, any of these things, can you feel comfortable in coming to us and talking to us about that? You're not going to be in trouble. I promise you, you're not going to be in trouble. But it's important that we keep you safe because otherwise, some of these things are going to be super heavy for you to have to work through on your own. And so, having those conversations early, teaching your kids to be very verbal, teaching them how to say no, how to if something happens, yell no as loud as they can, because the predators are looking for kids who are going to be docile, quiet. In fact, there's a lot of stuff in the movie Sound of Freedom gives an awareness. In the book, I did everything I could to give parents the tools they need to keep their kids safe. In the beginning section, it's all on the making of an undercover operator, but in there, every single paragraph are things parents can do, training us what to look for and how to identify when trafficking is going on, training us on self-defense. I've had guys that come to me and they say, okay, I can't be with my kids all the time. How do I just have a security person with them always? No, having those conversations where they can be loud and they can be verbal about it. They know what's going on, and put your kids through some kind of self-defense stuff. It helps their confidence and puts them in a situation where they're not going to be a victim. I suggest Krav Maga. So as one of the reasons why, most of me and most of my operators were Krav Maga trained. Now, for you guys who don't know Krav, it's Israeli Special Forces hand-to-hand combat training, and it's the most lethal on earth. It's not bow to your sensei and 3 points when you kick him in the leg. It's brick to their head, go home to your family. And every move, they don't talk, they don't walk, they don't see, etc. We were trained to take away a gun faster than people could pull the trigger every time. Now, my daughter, she's 100 pounds, if that. She about 7 years ago, she wanted to travel and train around the world in holistic healing stuff. She wanted to go to Peru by herself and to Mexico. And I said, sweetie, I says, let me, she was 21 years old at the time, but she looked like she was 16. So I says, let me send security with you. She said, Dad, I've been training. I said, okay, show me. And I put the mitts on. I says, okay, let's go. She goes, do higher. Now I'm 6 feet high, right? She says, above your head. I put it up here. This little girl at 5'3", boom, jumps up and kicks that thing clean out of my hand above my head. I said, all right, yeah, you can go. I'm good with that. Because she is confident in any situation because she's gone through the training. So put your kids through something where they can defend themselves, teach them what's appropriate and what's not. Have the conversation where they can very comfortably come to you and tell you anytime something is off.
So one of the reasons I like Krav Maga versus Jitsu versus Sistema or versus any of those is the speed to pick up the basic skills. It's one of the great things about Krav Maga. You don't have to spend 30 years, 20 years, an entire year doing this. You can go do it very, very quickly that you will be a different human being about 48 hours after you get a hold of some of this stuff. They're going to get you through the basics. And are you going to beat someone who's really well trained? Probably not. But is it going to give you a good chance? Yeah, it's going to give you a really good chance. So doing the Krav Maga, getting through that, if you want to elevate into Sistema or Jiu-Jitsu, it just takes more time in those environments and with those disciplines. It's also teaching you your worth, your confidence, 100%. So, we've got speak to people, get some sort of training, be verbal, have a place that's going home. There's a lot of people who want to use technology to help us out. So installing routers that block certain things, putting your things, tracking your phones, putting an AirPod or what are they called? The little discs, in their nose and tracking them all around. What are things that actually work? Because that we can, this is the best way to track your kids. This is the best way to make sure your kids aren't doing this. Because I think the most shocking thing you've said so far is they come home and they sleep in your beds at night. They're in your house. I always thought that these things are happening without their interaction with you. They're not actually in your home. So that's having seen that. What are the things we can do? Are there any technologies that work to help us out with this?
Absolutely. There's plenty of things that you can put. Number one, just to keep your kids out of the pornography world. There's a lot of protections that you can put on your phones, on your computers. Make sure that the computers in your home are in public places. Have a little desk in the kitchen area. Don't have your son's laptop behind his locked door in his bedroom, and have some filters that are on those as well. But there's only so much you can do without our kids figuring out how to get around it. The conversations, I go back to that over and over again, having the conversations with them about why these things are dangerous, why these things will take us down a dark road and desensitize us, etc. And it's important also to pay attention to not only the internet and things like that, but everything that's coming into your home. A little side story that I think your listeners will enjoy knowing. The distribution company that we went with for The Sound of Freedom is called Angel Studios. And it's because for years we had finished Sound of Freedom 5 years before it came out and could not get distribution. Why? Because the narrative was something that Hollywood and big media did not want us to have these conversations. Why? Because there's so much of that crap going on there. We were blocked by Disney. Disney bought out Fox International that had the distribution rights, and we could not get distribution with them holding the distribution rights. Later, we had a former Disney executive that tied it up another. And people say, "What? At Disney?" Yes, these guys were tying this up, which was crazy to me. Now, moving forward, if you go back in history for Angel Studios, they actually got sued by Hollywood years ago, their predecessor company. Why? Because they had created a piece of hardware and software. It was kind of like a little DVR player that gave you and I, as responsible parents, the ability to tune down whatever was on the movie. There was a blasphemy switch. There was a nudity one. There was a blood and gore violence one, right? And you could take it from 10 all the way down to 1. You could take a rated R NC-17 movie and make it a G1 by just moving those things down. And Hollywood sued them simply for creating a product that allowed us to filter what was coming into our homes. This is important to know when you're trying to understand the narrative, the plan of a lot of these things. And so we need to pay attention. We need, for years, I loved Will Smith movies. I loved him. He was a great actor until I started paying attention to the number of P. Diddy parties he was at and what his wife walked in on him doing and who was at some of those parties, etc. I simply cannot support movies now that are putting money in pockets of people who are so far out of alignment with the principles that I want to teach my family and my children. And so paying attention to everything that's coming into your home, not just the internet, but the movies, etc., and how they're affecting your family.
So on the tech side, we do have the ability with proxies and things of that nature. We can block things out. We could also track things as well. I think most of the problem with parents or anyone is like, "Oh, I'm gonna track it or I'm gonna block it, that's going to fix it." And I think to your point, your kid at 5 years old has already seen porn on the other 5-year-old kid's thing. So like, "Well, I'm gonna take away the phone." That's what world are you preparing them for? There's gonna be phones, there's gonna be screens. Kids, we already know that we spend a third of our life sleeping. We now know that kids born now will spend a third of their life on a screen. It's a terrifying thing. So you're not going to get them away from it. It's going to be there. So yeah, you can monitor it to keep it out. But if you're blocking it, or like, oh, I'm not going to give you a phone, or you can't do this, versus, okay, we're going to have this conversation. I grew up around guns. It is what it is. I wish I lived in a world where we didn't need guns. I really do. That would be amazing. I wish I lived in a world that we didn't need to have wars or tanks, or that would be great. But I do live in a world that has that, so I'd much rather be educated on it, on how to use it, because they're not going anywhere. So it's not, is it legal? Is it not legal? A ton of things are illegal. The things that you fought against are illegal. Doesn't mean it stops it. The only thing that can help it is education. So there is ways to monitor, there is a way to keep this, but don't think that's going to fix it. If you block all the porn in your house, I guarantee you they're gonna figure it out. They're gonna find a way around it. If you block the video games, they're gonna figure it, just like you found a way to avoid the stuff that your parents didn't want you to do either, right? It is what it is. So fine. Sorry. Sorry, Dad. She was cute. I had to go. Sorry, forgot that. It is what it is. This is what we do. So being there and having the conversations are important. Now, we talked about training, we talked about monitoring, we talked about keeping an eye on it. What are the things that are the myths that people believe that are hard coded? Like, oh, if this, then that. The post hoc ergo propter hoc. The of therefore because of it. What are the things that people believe completely that this is true, therefore this happens, and it's just wrong?
Well, number one, believing that trafficking doesn't happen in our neighborhoods, that children are safe there, that it only happens in Mexico or Thailand or Colombia or whatever. The truth is this. You walk out your front door. I don't care if you're in an apartment complex or an affluent neighborhood. You walk out your front door, you look down left and you look right. There's a high chance that one of those neighbors is a dangerous place for children. Okay. Now, does that mean that we have to be a helicopter mom, helicopter dad all the time? No, it means that we need to have those healthy conversations with our kids because they're going to end up down the hall. They're going to be down the street. And it's so important that we have those conversations. Number two, have don't be letting your kids having sleepovers. Guys, that's not a good idea unless you really, really, really know that family and where they are. No, sleepovers is a bad idea. This stuff happens all the time there. And it also is a big myth that it only happens to girls. No, there's a huge number of boys. The problem is the boys never talk about it. And so understanding that they're as much of a risk as the girls are, and recognizing that and having those conversations with them. The another myth is that oh we got a whole bunch of them. I'll tell you some real life examples
Please.
of undercover operations. I was running an operation in Cancun. It was over New Year's, and I had done 2 weeks of undercover that they had identified. There was a lot of trafficking, some kids that were brought in from different areas of Mexico to supply the party goers that were going to be there over New Year's. And at the time, I wasn't married. I had an ex girlfriend that she wanted to be with me over New Year's. I'm like, I'm in the middle of this freaking operation. I can't. So she flew down there with her cousin. Um, and they were down there just kind of playing and whatever else. I made sure they were away from the big city and a little private, very secure area. But they were posting. Her cousin was posting things online. Hey, we're in Cancun, whatever else. Well, I came back with from the operation area, and that night she said, "Hey, Paul, look at this. This guy wants. He says that he's a guide, and he wants to take us on a free ride on his boat, and he can just take us around anywhere." Well, the guy she showed me, was the one of the traffickers that was providing kids as young as 7 years old. And what was happening is he was also some of the victims that he had were he was scouring the internet, identifying anybody who was posting that looked like they were there without parents, and he would take them, and based on his conversation with them and how vulnerable they were, he would take their passport and their phone and drug them, and boom, bring them into this horrific trade. And so your kids do not need to have the entire world knowing where they're checking in all the time. On their social media, you can't get them away from their social media. You're gonna make them a dummy at school if they don't have any. But make it so that the only people that can actually see what they're doing each day and where they are people who are their verified real friends. Don't have that open up. This takes a few minutes of your time, parents, to go on and manage the settings on their social media so that it is not open to the general public, because predators are everywhere scouring on their social media to identify victims.
The other thing I tell people is you can absolutely 1000% post pictures of your vacation and how exciting it is. Just wait a couple weeks till your vacation is over and then post it. Don't post it while
Exactly.
you're there, because all you're doing in that situation is telling me you're not at home. I could break into your home and exactly where you are, what you're doing, and I could break into your hotel. So just get a time delay. You can post it. Just wait a little
Yep.
bit. There's a myth on the internet, and I don't know if it's myth or fact, where they were interviewing a absolute waste of human flesh predator who was hunting, children. And they asked him, they said, "What is the indicator? What did you look for in the children that did it?" He goes, "Oh, I wasn't looking at the children. I was looking at the father. Is the father a threat?" And that was the deterrent if I was gonna go after the child. Is that myth or is that fact?
No, that's an absolute fact. In fact, I talk about a lot of that in the Sound of Freedom book. I talk about what predators look for in their victims, and absolutely, a child who the father is absent is a way more of an opportunity for a predator than one where the father is very present, and present, not just still married to the mom, but emotionally present, physically present, right? Go pick up your kids from dance, guys. Be there, and make sure that the other guys that are there with their kids, aren't looking around trying to figure out which of these kids don't have a dad. Now you're there. Hey, I'm here. I'm holding space for my kid. In addition to that, um, teach your kids awareness. We so many times kids are walking around, they've got their headphones on, they've got their phones down, they're completely distracted and are not aware of anything going on around them. When you're out in a public situation, they did some studies with felons who had committed some heinous crimes against children, and they showed videos or pictures of people in public situations, and asked the predators, who would you choose as your victim? And it was almost 90% plus of them all would choose the same one based on how insecure they looked, how they were walking, how distracted they were, how they weren't with other friends, etc. They seemed alone. They almost inevitably they were picking out the same victim on all of these videos because of the fact that these kids were not trained to be able to deal with life in a public situation. So,
So how so give me a way to do that, because I love situational awareness. I've had it my entire life. It's something that was because I grew up in we're gonna my home was very safe, but outside of my home was not. So I had to have my head on a swivel and build situational awareness very, very early on. It's one of my favorite things in the world that's been taught. If you haven't had that, if it's not part of your core, part of who you are and how your ethos is, how do you train situational awareness if it's brand new to you?
we actually have, because I feel this is so important, we have free things available on the Liberating Humanity website. I have some training on there by a guy by the name of Steve Tarani. Steve is one of the top situational awareness trainers in the world. He's also one of the top edged weapons and improvised weapons trainers. He trains CIA, FBI, Secret Service, and I had extensive training with him. In fact, most of my operators as well, because when you're in when you're at 2 a.m. downtown Port-au-Prince, Haiti, the darkest, most dangerous city on the planet right now. Well, I guess now Puerto Vallarta is kind of getting up there, you have to understand situational awareness. 95% of the times where you had to go to fists, you had to go to your hard skills. 95% of those could have been avoided if you knew what to look for before it happened. And there's a book that I had my operators read called The Gift of Fear. Now, what it talks about the thousands and thousands of things that your subconscious mind is picking up all the time, and the importance of listening to your gut. Because your conscious mind, there's just a little thin part of your world that you're paying attention to. Your subconscious mind, out of your peripheral, as you were walking into that restaurant, your subconscious mind picked up the fact that there was a guy down that alley that had a big coat on that was too heavy for the heat of the day. And look, but your conscious mind wasn't paying attention because you're late for this meeting in here, right? Your subconscious mind can pick up on the change of the noise level when you're sitting there at the Starbucks and you're engaged in a conversation. Your subconscious is going to pick up the fact that somebody was arguing in the corner. It kind of got quiet as somebody walked in, whatever. Just trust it. Trust that gut instinct, because it's coming from information way beyond what your conscious mind is.
100%. And it comes from this idea that it was built to keep you from being eaten by lions. That's where this comes from. We're talking thousands of years of this. So you might want to listen to it. Because if you're sitting there, you're getting little hairs on the back of your neck, like, oh, because it was designed you don't want to become prey. And there are people who are actively 1000% hunting you. So the next thing I want to talk about, we've talked about, okay, you're an adult. We talked about kids. What are the things, because you can't always be there, right? This is the problem with the helicopter theory. They're like, oh, I'm going to be around my kids 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. No. It's adorable that you think that, but no. It's like the people who think the earth is flat. I'm like, oh, that's adorable. Go away. So since you have this absolute crazy illusion, what are the things that you can have on yourself? What are I'm going to have sit rep. I'm going to have a situational awareness. I've been relatively trained. What are the things that you're going to want to physically carry upon you? Because I always carry my everyday carry has very specific things on it. Always. I've designed it. It's a very specific way. If I'm going to certain environments, I know not to wear certain watches. When I travel and I'm internationally traveling, you will never see me with my fancy watches. I'm normally wearing a beat up Casio because A, I love it. It's amazing. But B, I'm changing the optics of people looking at me. Because if I walk out with my Breitling or my Rolex or my whatever it is, I'm a target now. So I know to change certain watches because I've been taught by people from the IDF, and they sat down with me and I brought my luggage. They're like, yeah, all of that's going away. I'm like, why? They're like, well, that's an $800 luggage. You are now a screaming target. I was like, what are we going to, like, congratulations, we're going to the Army surface floor. I'm like, seriously? He's like, yeah, everything's going to cost $100. And I was like, what the hell? Like, I look like a bum. They're like, uh-huh. So what are the things, and it works, because if you're walking around with a perfectly pair of Ray-Bans, you're a target, dude. Just it is what it is. Go to the gas station, get a pair of $9 glasses. Sorry, suck it up and deal. What are the things on your everyday carry that you've learned that a parent should have on them, a teenager should have on them, or even a kid maybe should have on them, that it gives them a better chance of not becoming a victim?
Well, I'll say that what I carry is different in my environment and where I'm traveling. When I'm in the U.S., especially in states that I can conceal, I have a Glock on me always. My one of my trainers said, Paul, he says, what's the most important thing to have in a gunfight? A gun, right? And he said, and you're trained enough. Now, if you don't have the training, then don't be carrying it. He says, you're trained enough that it is your responsibility to have one with you because of the training that you have. Can you imagine being in a situation where now you need it and you don't have the ability to neutralize that threat, right? Now, moving on from there, a lot of the things that having having a blade weapon and knowing how to use it was something that now we can have that and carry it in different states, different countries, and whatnot, where I couldn't carry a gun. And that's why getting trained on the effective use of that is super important. Now, I had one of my undercover operators. He was stabbed 27 times, and he's still alive. Now, it's because he knew how to be able to keep that away from his vitals, etc. Now, beyond that, I I had my operators always carry with them a tourniquet. Now you wonder why a tourniquet. Now this is knowing how to use something like that. And if it was funny, we had one of our CIA trainers years ago that we were in a room, and he said, guys, how many of you have a first aid kit in your car? And a few of us raised our hands, and he said, what's in that first aid kit? And I jokingly said, Band-Aids and
Band-Aids.
Neosporin, right? Band-Aids and Neosporin. And he
That's the
said,
word.
his exact words, he said, if you have, he said, if Band-Aids and Neosporin can fix your problem, then you don't have a problem, right?
1,000%. 1,000%.
And the majority of people who die in an accident, either a car accident or a knife
Yeah.
accident or whatever, the majority of them would still be alive today if within the next 3 or 4 minutes after the accident happened, somebody who knew how to open the airways and had the tools, knew how to stop the bleeding and had the tools, was there and stopped it. Most of those people would be alive today. And so I required our teams to have that knowledge. And we had one of our operators, one of our guys who would be dead today if it wasn't for the fact that the guy that was next to him had a tourniquet, knew how to use it, boom, applied that, and the surgeon, when we got to the hospital, said he wouldn't have made it if he hadn't had the right care. And so, things like that, just those are physical things, but it's important too. We live in a world where you never know, and you don't want to be to the point later on in life you're like, man, if I had known, if I had taken a half an hour course and learned how to properly apply a tourniquet or learned how to open that airway, my child would be alive today. Guys, it's worth a half an hour of your time to
Yeah.
learn that stuff and to buy it and have it on you at all times.
I remember the first time I did knife training, the instructor came out, he goes, "All right, for everyone who's playing, you have to accept if it gets to this point, you're gonna get wet. It's gonna get wet. You're gonna
Yeah.
bleed. You just need to accept it. You just have to decide where that's going to be." And I remember someone said this, and actually I'll steal it from Jocko. Individual Jocko Willis, SEAL Team 3 Brutus Company. They said, "What is your most important thing in a fight?" He goes, "Your shoelace is being tied." He goes, "'Cause I'm gonna do everything possible to get away as fast as I possibly do. I don't wanna fight you. I do not.
Absolutely.
It's the last thing I wanna do." So having shoes that have laces on them, it blows people's minds. If you cannot
Well,
physically move quickly, then you have a problem. So this is a SEAL commander who said this. Now, once you get by that, it's the training. There's a mistake that people make all the time when they have weapons or they have knives or they have guns. If you haven't been properly trained in any sort of hand-to-hand combat, how to discharge the weapon, how to shoot with different hands if your eyes messed up, or how to discharge it, bear spray. Just get bear spray. Don't go and get a
yeah.
shotgun because specifically here in the United States, I'm responsible from when the bullet leaves the barrel to when it stops. So if I discharge my firearm and it goes through this wall and kills little Susie on the other side of the wall as I was being attacked by a monster, I am responsible for it until that projectile comes to rest. And that's an
Yep.
important conversation. So if you haven't been
Yep.
trained on that level, don't use mace. I've been sprayed with mace in training exercises. I can still kill you if you spray me with mace. You hit me with bear spray, that's the end of that conversation. I'm not really moving very well. That conversation ends really fast. And people are like, well, I'm going to get it on me too. So the
So
threat stopped. You got hit with it. I'd rather deal with some really uncomfortable days than the other stuff that happened. So having those things that make sense. Now, obviously, we're not
well,
going to give. Sorry, go.
no, I was gonna do a quick follow up on your get out of the situation. Steve Turani, the one that the situational awareness, that one of the top edge weapons trainers, he he has what he calls the Nike move.
Mhm.
Heels, your Nike heels to the
Right.
attacker and get out. If I don't care, he says, guys, I don't care if you are the number one MMA fighter on the planet. I don't care. I don't care what your training is on anything. You win every fight you can avoid. and don't let your ego think, oh, I can handle these guys. I can handle this. You don't know what my trainer showed me. He's like, all right, let me show you something to just kind of get this into place. This guy was thinking he was all big, and he was good. He was really good. And he took this guy down because this guy was bullying him or whatever else. Well, the guy just kind of had one hand left, and he reached in his pocket, grabbed out a knife, boom, boom, boom. That guy didn't make it. Get out of the situation. If you can remove yourself, your family from the situation safely, do so. But yeah, I love your idea of bear spray. I actually have bear spray in our motorhome, not just for bears, for those situations. I have a taser, but I've been tased before by my own taser, and that it kind of puts me out of commission at the
Okay.
same time.
All of us have been tased by our own taser once. So just let's get that out of the way right now. It is not fun. It is embarrassing. We've all done it. But we talk about this all the time. You can't outrun physics. If I discharge a weapon and it hits your body, I don't care how trained you are. I don't care how trained you are not going to survive things penetrating your body. So get the heck out of Dodge as quickly as you can. Avoid the fight, because you might be able to beat the guy. You might be able to beat his 4 friends. But what about the guy on the balcony who's got a firearm at you? You're never going to get away from that. So avoid it as fast as possible. So that's the adult side. For the kids, what should we there's something called a monkey ball. Are you familiar with a monkey ball? So
I
it's a
don't.
way that you wrap a specific corded thing. They're called monkey ball. It's a corded thing. It's a thing, a little ball there. You crack some with it, it won't be bad. So we carry it, and it's complete yarn. It's a monkey ball. Sometimes there's a marble inside. They're called monkey balls. Not in a weird way, but that's what they're called. Those are things that when I was a teenager, I had on a keychain because I wasn't allowed to carry knives at school. So I got trained on how to use what's known as a monkey ball, how to use it and to
Mhm.
work through all of those things. Because what I wanted to carry to school was a tank, but they wouldn't let me have a tank in school because jerks. So, but using those little things. So if you're looking at kids and they're trying to do this, I know there's settings that I do on my iPhone just in case my iPhone gets stolen, which is so important because they have all of your information and they hack it. Now they've got your passwords and your private pictures and all of that. Understanding that if you do send something over the internet, congratulations, sooner or later it's going to get public. Just it is what it is. It is accept it. It's part of the game. It's just surprise. But with kids, what can we give them so that they could have it on every day? Do we want to put those air tags on them? What do you recommend?
Yeah, well, first of all, we use Find My Friends on our whole family always has Find My Friends on, and so we can always be seeing where each other is, etc. Air tags are great as well. We have an air tag in the kids' backpacks. Now, I will also say this: there are things that you don't want. Parents, don't put your son's name on his backpack. That
Yeah.
by having Billy on the backpack or whatever, a predator could very easily say, "Hey, Billy, oh yeah, yeah, you know me, yeah, yeah, your mom said for me to come and get you." That's is common. So if you want to put initials there, that's great. Don't put their whole name there. Also, have a code word. Have a code word that if anybody comes to pick you up at school and says that, hey, your mom's in the hospital, I'm supposed to come and pick you up, you say, what's the code word? It could be something simpler. Our code word for years was marshmallow with our kids, right? If something happened where they needed to know that, yes, indeed, mom sent somebody, whatever else it was, they would say, what's the code word? The code word's marshmallow. Okay, great. Now I know. Super simple for them to understand where that communication gap wouldn't be there for a predator to be able to get in the door,
Right.
right?
I
And so
I love what you said about the name because what we did when I was growing up is we didn't do the names. Instead, what we did was we had a sticker. So we had he would sew something, the little patches that we would have. And that way I knew that patch was my stuff. And we never did names. We did it by a patch because that's how
mhm.
we did it. It was easier. And I still to this day remember my code word. And no, I'm not saying it live on the air. So absolutely not. No. We'll say it was marshmallow. We'll go with that. Was it? Whatever. So I remember mine from when I was a kid. We absolutely had it. So, and I remember
Mhm.
my neighbor from across the street, his name is Frank Fort. He down in Miami. He's a sportscaster. He came and picked me up one day from school, and because I got very sick, and I'm like, "What's the code word?" And he was like, and he had to call my dad and say, "What is the code word to get your son?" And my dad's like, "Oh, here it is." And this is before cell phones allowed. So he's sitting in the school. I'm like, "I can't go with you," and I'm throwing up all over myself. I'm
Good
like,
for
I was
you.
told I can't do this because I was taught very early on. So,
Good for you.
so, so bad. It was so embarrassing. So, what are the other things that are like gateways? to these problems. So we know what we to avoid it, but what are the things that, we talk about pot being a gateway to, other things, which you want to smoke pot, please just eat it because I don't want to smell it. It smells so bad. Please, on my behalf, for everybody else on the planet, quit smoking pot around me. Just eat it because, oh, you stink. Anyway, back to this. What is a gateway? What are the things like, the chances, if you do that, the chances that you're going to run into this go up exponentially?
Well, first of all, I would say that kids that are on their online gaming platforms that regularly put themselves out there to, in their conversations and move those conversations from the gaming platform over to a WhatsApp or something like that, that there's a it's a telltale sign right there. It happens a lot. That's how the predators move them around. Um,
Mm,
and in it, yeah, it's crazy.
it's disgusting.
Um, yeah, and there's uh, going to um we've seen a lot of kids that, especially in the second, third world countries, places in Mexico, these poor kids in these poor neighborhoods, they'll anytime they'll get addicted to drugs, a lot of times the predators will get them. The drug gateways are also predator gateways to other things, right? So if they can get your little Johnny to start smoking and then take some marijuana and whatever, hey, your dad's going to be super mad at you, but this is our secret, right? Well, then this is our secret turns into more this is our secrets. And the drugs inevitably will, and alcohol as well. Anytime that you can get a child in that kind of a situation where not only are you numbing their senses, but you're also making them feel guilt and shame, and hey, that's okay, this is our secret, we won't tell your dad, you won't tell your dad, no, no. And so those are absolutely gateways to physical and sexual abuse as well. Because it's important to know that well over 90% of children who are sexually abused, and even ones who are sold for sex, over 90% of them, it was familial. It was a family member. We had one operation where this little girl was just barely turned. She was 12 years old, and she was being sold by her aunt. Her aunt was working with the traffickers. The mother had no idea. The aunt was babysitting her, showing her pornography, and told her, "Listen, you're going to lose your virginity sometime anyway. If you come to this party and lose it to these guys, then I'll pay you $500." She was charging us $5,000 for this little 12-year-old. And she had already been desensitized because her aunt had been giving her drugs, had been showing her pornography, had been, trust me more than your mom, all of this stuff. And so this happens a lot. And this was her aunt.
So now that I want to go through
So
it,
those are all
what?
gateways.
Yeah, those are. So it's hard to pivot this quickly. If there's so much out there, there's so much you've experienced, and there's so much and how do people find out more? Because we could probably talk for the next 7, 8 hours. Where do they find your book? Where do they listen to it? And then for the people like me who wanna just go kill everyone, how can we help? What's a more responsible way of helping other than getting on a plane and running around and just randomly shooting people in the back of the head that touch children? Which I think is a responsible thing to do. Just anyway, how do we track you down, Paul? How do we connect with you? How do we support? How do we keep our kids safe? What's the best way to get information and find you?
Thank you, Charles. A couple things. Number one, liberating humanity. Liberating humanity is on all social media. You can go to Instagram, Facebook. I think by LinkedIn, it's just my name, Paul Hutchinson. But liberating humanity will find you there, and you can get information there on everything from the Steve Sharani's training to the healing retreats to even the book Sound of Freedom, and even my new book that's coming out within the next couple months called Your Infinite Wealth. We'll talk about that on a whole different podcast
Okay.
on the golden age of conscious capitalism. But the Sound of Freedom book is available on Amazon.
Mhm.
And we are working right now on the audio version for guys like you and me who hate to spend time just holding the book, and I want to just put it on 2x and go through it. So
Mhm.
we're almost done with the audio version of Sound of Freedom, and I'll get that to you as well.
Perfect. Paul, thank you so much for doing this and for what you're doing and protecting those little ones and hopefully arranging those meetings that you and I both want to arrange all the time to let someone else touch them. I just want to arrange all the meetings as possible. I really appreciate it. Thank you for coming on.
Well, thank you. One last website is if you want to go directly to help the kids, go to childliberation.org. So liberatinghumanity.com or childliberation.org. You can get directly involved with what we're doing to help the kids.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Paul. I appreciate it. That's a wrap on another episode of the Proven Podcast. Positioning beats noise, clarity beats volume. Stop reacting to headlines, start shaping the narrative. While others chase attention, you could be building authority. Remember, if you don't control your message, the market will control it for you.